Pathways for Prosperity is a two-year commission launched in January of 2018. The commission is aimed at understanding the impacts and implications of technology on sustainable development. On this episode of In Focus, we're extremely privileged to have been joined by one of its two academic directors, Professor Benno Ndulu, the former governor of the Bank of Tanzania. In this interview, we'll explore some of the challenges and opportunities and some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of technology and its impact on sustainable development and transformation in Africa. This is the first of a two-part interview. So can you tell us a bit about the motivation behind the Pathways for Prosperity, this commission you're now part of?
The world is going through very rapid change on the technological front. These changes are transforming lives. Things like mobile telephony, mobile money, to artificial intelligence. This particular pace of change that the Commission wants to make sure that developing countries and the poor within these countries are not left behind. And therefore, partly the Commission wants to look at the opportunities that come with this transformation, look at the challenges and risks that come with this transformation, and make sure that developing world is able to harness these opportunities for continued path to prosperity, as well as manage the risks that this transformation also brings to the fore. Our primary motivation is making sure that these technological changes do not impact negatively on the process of development we have seen the last 25 years, where we know poverty has been reduced by half. And there are those who worry in the world that with these changes, jobs may be lost. And with those job losses, of course, the process of this development and reduction in poverty might also get interrupted. But most of that conversation is taking place in the developed world. So this commission wants to bring that conversation to the developing world, and in particular target that the poor within these countries, also women, in the context of, again, the group of stakeholders in developing world, protected from the negatives of these changes, and also be able to use these opportunities to get ahead.
So just to focus a little bit on the commission before we get into the kind of technical work that you're doing, how is it structured? I mean, where is it based, and who's involved in the work that you're doing?
The commission is led by three co-chairs. It's Melinda Gates, it's Strav Masiyiwa, who's the CEO of Econet, and it's Sri Mulyani, who is the finance minister for Indonesia, and she used to be one of the managing directors of the World Bank previously. These are working together with commissioners who come from, some of them from tech industries, including private investors in that. For example, one who is certainly working here is Tala, which does this microcredit in Tanzania and in Kenya. She's one of the commissioners. I'm just mentioning this. There are some who are ministers, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Development of Netherlands. It's one of the commissioners. And you have also a group that come from international financial institutions. And to join that group is two of us who are co-directing. We are called academic co-directors for the commission with Stefan Dekon, Professor Stefan Dekon of University of Oxford. The commission's secretariat is at Oxford University at the School of Government. University of Oxford won, if you want, the hosting of this commission. And I was drafted by University of Oxford in that context to be part of this, yeah.
And in the 2 years, you know, what is the ultimate end goal of the commission? Is it a report? Is it that you've successfully moved the conversation forward? Like, what does success look like?
Actually, three major parts to the final product. First, we would like to end with a set of principles which govern this new technological reality in the world, which makes sure that the governance system actually takes into account the fact that some of these technologies now cross borders. Tax jurisdictions are no more all in one place because employers could be in US, but those who are actually offering services could be in a whole host of other countries. It's also true that under this system of new reality technologically, workers may stop being employees because they are contracted on the basis of tasks. Then the question is, who is responsible even for their social security? Is it where they reside, or is it where the employer resides? So there are a number of things that need to be guided under this new system. And therefore, you need a set of principles that makes sure that these opportunities are harnessed for the benefit of all, at the same time that risks are also being managed at a global scale. So what we hope is to call to these principles and call to action internationally. Hopefully, we are trying also to work with entities that may take forward these principles in the form of a compact of those who are willing to take this type of action. This is one major output. The second is developing a toolkit which will help countries go through the process of preparing themselves for this new reality. Also to make sure that countries look at trade-offs, because the impact within countries is not going to be uniform. Obsolescence, as is known, which is skills may become obsolete, assets may become obsolete. We have gone through this type of experience here with Morogoro Shoe Factory closing, not only jobs, but also assets which did lie idle. So countries need to think about social protection for those who lose these jobs. Countries need to think about how you retrain your citizens and prepare in terms of upgrading skills for the future. All this needs to take place in a conscious way. Right now, things are happening.
Kind of haphazardly and so on.
And this type of toolkit helps the countries to think this through and really reach what we hope is a societal deal in terms of how to manage the adjustment to this new reality. So that will draw on evidence, new evidence that we hope we can gather. And this evidence shouldn't just be a replication of what we hear from conversations in the developed countries. We'd like to hear new voices to this. Our own package of, if you want, evidence would be organized in different forms, some in blog formats, others in small papers, all helpful for making countries engage in this type of dialogue. So the toolkit facilitates pulling this type of evidence together for a country to go through this process. It won't be a set of recommendations or prescriptions, rather than a tool that facilitates dialogue amongst
something they can use and adapt to their own conditions, kind of thing.
That's right. We also hope, which is the third part of output, is to have a number of booklets, if you want, which contains lessons and experiences from countries that have gone through this type of change, either have managed this successfully or have had to deal with issues as a resource for all those that would like to get engaged in managing this type of process going forward. So it's knowledge, it's a tool to help in terms of dialogue, and it's principles for overall governance.
Sure. And from going through the materials, there seem to be kind of three key focus areas, and you touched on them earlier. So the first is, the idea of impacts on the economy. Yeah. The second on human development, and the third on government or governance. If we can go through each of these three and, in turn go through the challenges and the opportunities you see, maybe we can start with the economy. You had alluded earlier that one of the major concerns we have is, job loss because of technology. But we also have other issues, increasing inequality, for example, social protection, loss of controls. It seems very negative. It's a very pessimistic view. Is that something you share, or do you see opportunities as well, and what might some of those be?
Yeah, actually, because of what you just said, let me start more on the opportunities side. Sure. We have had good experience here with this technological drive that relates to provision of financial services. This country has moved very rapidly. In 40 years to 2006, we were able only to reach about 9% of adults in Tanzania in terms of formal financial services. With the advent of this new technology, mobile money, we were able to do in 10 years, moving that access level from 9% all the way to 65.3%.
And that's in a 10-year window.
In 10 years. This is the concept of leapfrogging, which means actually for those that never had access to this technology before, it would have taken them several decades to achieve this same level. It took us a decade. What took others almost 4 or 5 decades, and which took us 4 decades just to get to 9% in the absence of that technology. So it can help us leapfrog and make progress very, very quickly. It's also true that typically these changes have led to reduction of costs of delivery of services. It has also led to improvement in the quality of services. These are all opportunities that one can exploit. It's also true that globalization of value chains was facilitated actually by information technology, which improved logistics so that one is able to locate anywhere in order to serve the whole world. And this is what helped China, helped all the Asian countries that made very quick progress in terms of industrial development because of that globalization of value chains. And more recently now there is globalization of value chains in services. And also domestically, platforms now which matches those that are looking for work and those who have work. So for example, it used to be very difficult for a carpenter or a mason in terms of artisans just to know where is work. There is a new platform nowadays here which if you go on that, you know where jobs are and you can match those who are looking for jobs and those that actually want these type of skills. So all these are possible positives and opportunities that we should harness in order to make sure that we actually not only promote growth, but we can also promote growth in a manner that reaches all the way to those who are also poor, because you reduce transactions costs, right? So this is one side of economics. The other side of economics is more the bad news, if you want. Loss of jobs is probably the one that is being discussed most widely. To the extent there's even a scare about robots taking over all jobs, and there is one wisecrack which I thought was really smart. Is that look, if robots take all the jobs, then we might reach the true state of communism, where humans will just have what they need and robots would work for all of us. But those who crack that joke forget that robots belong to companies, etc. So you would have to work on the governance side too, about how to do this. But, you know, one can stretch the current reality to that extreme. And the question is, what do you do with those who have lost jobs? What social protection do they have? What type of retraining would they need? What type of new skills one would like to build in a country to get prepared for this change? And even some research which talks about what will be the jobs of the future. And we know already that jobs that use cognitive skills on the services side, those that are not repetitive, which robots can do, would tend to be the type of jobs that would be for the future. And fortunately, services is among those. And our countries have moved very quickly to actually to be service-oriented. In this country, in our own country, services sector almost accounts for close to half of production of income in this country. Whether that can replace industrialization, that's the other question. So the other downside, which is more a loss of opportunity, is with respect to the fact that I think industrialization as labor-intensive industrialization, which helped China and all other countries in the East make very fast progress. Might not be an option now. So it means our countries would have lost opportunities to use that escalator because it's an escalator in the sense it moves you faster than the rest of the world, so you can catch up. We have to start thinking about alternative escalators to take us up and do catch up. And the same, because industrialization then not only created growth, but also created jobs for the unskilled. So that's the other downside, which is we have lost that opportunity, and we need to think about new opportunities for that.
Sure. And just as a kind of follow-up, as I was listening to you, and this might be already jumping ahead in terms of the Commission's work, is the infrastructure in place? Are we ready to be able to take advantage of those opportunities? As you've mentioned, the industrialization pathways that we've set ourselves on might no longer be viable. Yeah. So do we have the infrastructure in place? Are we training our labor, or at least have we started thinking about retraining our labor for these potential other pathways? I don't want to preempt the Commission's work, but are the fundamentals in place in your view?
No, I don't think they are in place yet, and that's why I think the Commission is seriously focusing on trying to develop this toolkit to get countries really to deliberate and prepare for these particular set of changes. You have to fix your education to be properly geared towards this new reality. You have to develop skills that now would be more for jobs of the future. It's possible already to start looking at alternative escalators. We know agro-processing, agro-industry can, with the benefit of technology, again, be quite highly productive, in the sense with high productivity growth. It might not be as high as manufacturing, but some of them could be. So countries have to start looking for this and be able to manage adjustment to this change in a more conscious way. And it is that, I think, which the Commission is trying very much to support, that countries start thinking about this.